There we go. This is number six in our continuing series of discussions about the afterlife and grief and these relationships, these sweetheart soulmate relationships. And we come today with a topic. Would you please tell us about the topic, Mary Beth?
Yes, well, I asked William if he would like to meet with me again in one of these recordings because a couple things came to mind. In talking to so many people whose most precious person has passed, a lot of times everybody struggles with the grief, every single one of us. But a lot of times, one of the things that people struggle with when trying to move in more positive directions with their thoughts and feelings is that they run up against like a brick wall that says, but here's this reality. I can't touch them. I can't kiss them. I can't see them. I mean, of course, every so often we have phenomenon where people actually can see their lovers, but it's not a usual ordinary thing. And it's certainly never, ever like the way it was when they were still in their human body. And so people are saying, yes, but like, yes, I want to feel better. Yes, I don't want to feel this pain. Yes, you're, yeah, but I can't hold all. I just want to hug him. I just want to kiss him. I just want to make love. I just want to hold his hand when we go shopping or, put my arm around her, whatever it is. And so there are ways, first of all, I think this is, by the way, disclaimer. This is my this is my way of looking at things and my ideas, and they don't have to be for everybody at all. If things don't resonate with you, just toss it away. But anyway, um, so I was somebody who really wanted to appreciate and enjoy my transdimensional romance that I have with my husband Paul. But in the beginning, of course, it doesn't feel like that's really a possibility because there's so much pain. And no matter how you look at it, they're not there physically anymore. And that ain't changing. Doesn't matter how you manifest things, doesn't matter how you think about things, doesn't matter at all. They ain't coming back, as my Aunt Angie would say, they ain't coming back into their physical body, no matter how much we wish for it, hope for, grieve for them, tell them we love them, and all of that. And adjusting to that is painful because even though we say the words about, well, yes, of course, love never dies and they go on, and someday we'll be together again. In the beginning, at least, that feels like that feels like nothing. It feels like, you're trying to get there, you're trying to appreciate this new way of being, but it's really, really hard because you're still longing for the way it was. Would you agree with that, William?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And
Okay.
I completely agree that there's almost no psychological relief in sight. There's no emotional relief in sight. And so but go ahead with your topic.
No, so I was going to say that in the beginning, most people, not every single person in the world, but most people do what we did. We started looking at like what happens when we die and what happens. I had a vague notion of that before because, of course, I availed myself of a lot of resources that said we don't die and we go on, but I never really dove deep into the specifics of it. I didn't need to. Nobody I loved and held as dearly as Paul had passed from me. The other people who passed in my life, like my parents and all that, that didn't cause the amount of grief that I experienced when Paul passed. So in the beginning, I made a valiant effort and I would read books and things. And sometimes I would get a tiny bit of satisfaction, like, oh, okay, all right, it's okay. You're going to see him again. But then that would fade away when I'd go to bed and I'd be, for all intents and purposes, alone in the bed and unable to hold him, unable, and I'd be upset. And it's so ironic, William, because the one person that you can talk to about anything that's troubling is not there the same way they were. So it's very difficult. But I was as I've said a million billion times, I was a student of Abraham for, I look back on it, it's about 20 years before Paul passed, that I was listening to Abraham, had gone to see them in person a number of times. Um, and so they were very steady about it, that your loved one who passes, they're with you, they've gone nowhere, and you will see them again and all of that. So and the best way to go about it is to begin to help yourself feel better. So all of these things I've already said. But what I haven't really talked about, or what we haven't really talked about exactly, you've offered some things, but I haven't really offered specifics about how to go about that, how to bridge that gap between longing for them and just agonizing over it to feeling a bit better, a bit better, a bit better, until you get to the point where you're actually appreciating this experience even more than when they were physically focused, which sounded bizarre and unattainable for me. But that's what Abraham said was possible. And I trusted them because I was well, first of all, because I had good experience, you know, uh, following their teachings all along. And second of all, because I was a weak kitten, I was ready to grasp onto anything that would help me. So I followed them. So what I did for today in terms of thinking of part of it, a big part of it is reframing and redirecting your thoughts. And a lot of people that we talk to, they they say, well, yeah, you can redirect your thoughts, but there's this reality that they're not here the same way. And how I don't understand how I can redirect my thought away from that because that's what's staring me in the face every single day. My whole life has been turned upside down in a billion ways. Not only that I can't see them, touch them, hold them, make love with them, all that, but they're not there at the dinner table. They can't take the car to the repair shop when it needs repair and I need to do something else. In a billion trillion ways it affects our lives. And I get that. But, but if you want, it ain't going to change. They're not coming back into their physical bodies. So we're faced with really, as Abraham says, stop looking for them where they were and start looking for them where they are. And one of the big ways to do that is to reframe our thoughts. And I know that for you, William, that when Irene passed, that even in the height of your grief, you did that you worked really hard on reframing your thoughts.
Right.
Yes?
And yeah, this is an excellent topic. And I really appreciate you bringing it up for discussion here. And I would say that reframing my thoughts, reframing how I thought about things was essential, absolutely essential. And in the beginning, I started doing this long before Irene. I started doing this decades ago for other things,
Yes.
for being able to handle and deal with other things that happen in life and being able to cultivate a happy, satisfied, fulfilling, a life that felt fulfilling to me. Very joyful and wonderful experience. And this was essentially a series of reframings. And that's really what it was reframing how I thought about things. And people might think, and I completely understand this, how can that possibly help with the depression, with the anger, with the sense of loss, with maybe a sense of abandonment, with issues, with and the only thing I can say is that I have experienced, but at least most of all of that in my life, and I reframed it away. I reframed it from being something that was hurtful or made me angry or troubled me or things that came between Irene and I in our relationship into things that were beautiful and very positive to think about and fulfilling and made me very happy. And like I said, I know that it's really difficult to think that this reframing is going to be all that effective when, as you say, you are constantly staring at the fact they're not physically with you. You're constantly staring at that fact. But I will say this, and this is just to begin this conversation. Uh, Irene and I moved into or lived in various houses. And until we got to this house, they were all dumps. Well, they were mostly dumps. I mean, one was the plumbing was awful. The roof leaked. The walls had cracks in them. And 99, well, let's see, a lot of people who would find themselves in that situation in that house would be miserable. I mean, because the fact of their dilapidated, messed up, substandard, should be torn down house is staring them in the face every day. And you can't get away from that fact. But here's a classic case of reframing is I reframed all that this way. Even though I was living in that house, and even though by virtually in any United States modern standards, it was a wreck. It was a shack, basically. I was still living better than 99% of all the people who currently live or have ever lived on the planet. I still had a hot and cold running shower. I still had a refrigerator. I still had a stove. I had TV. We had a couple of TVs. I had a vehicle. Um, I had a comfortable bed to sleep in. And this is just the physical things. I you know, I didn't have to worry about roaming bands of other tribes trying to kill me or get my stuff. I didn't have to worry about predators lurking about outside the cave or outside the fire or whatever. I didn't have to build a fire for warmth. I had clothes for winter and summer, and I reframed that in my mind as this is something to be grateful for and to appreciate because it in all reality it is you I'm living like a king compared even in that house compared to 99.99% of all the people who've ever lived on the planet whose daily life was just a struggle to survive. So I think that's a good example, to get this set off with about how the reality of your situation could be staring you in the face. But a lot of how you emotionally and psychologically live in that reality depends entirely on how you think about it.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So what I did to sort of this is hard to say because I never want to sound like, I'm being didactic or a know-it-all or anything, but I've so long practiced this that it's a habit for me now. So I went back to, I have like every book that Abraham ever wrote or anything like that. And I went back to their books. And this is one book. I'm sure you can get this for free on Libby the Libby app for the library thing. Ask and it is given, learning to manifest your desires. It's an old book. But what they have in here that's valuable, they have 22 different processes for helping yourself feel better. And a lot of them are directly related to how to move your thoughts in the directions of what you want. And the other book that kind of ties in with that, their other book, is called The Astonishing Power of Emotions, because they say that your thoughts are guided by your emotions. And you may not think that at first, but when you begin to observe your thought, like how you feel, like, oh, I'm feeling rotten. What am I thinking about right now? I haven't been, I'm just so down. What's going on in my thoughts? And when you make that connection, you can really see that your thoughts are being guided by your emotions. And so if you change your thoughts, you can change the way you feel. And so then, again, going back to the person who's struggling with this, who's, in grief. And of course, it doesn't happen in 2 seconds. You can't think one thought and all of a sudden all the pain goes away. It's a process like anything else. But one of their processes that they have, and I was going to explain this, but it's a little, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's easy, but it's hard to explain. So I'll explain it, but that's not the one I want to focus on. I'll just tell you the one in the book, Ask and It Is Given. What they say is they have a process called which thought is better. So you would think to yourself, you're going to think a thought, and then you're going to think another thought right after that thought, and think, is this better then? Do I feel better? Do I feel the same, or do I feel worse? So, for example, you might say, I'll never feel better. Every day I drag myself through my life. It's so empty and horrible and sad and painful. Okay, so that's a thought. So, and you're aware of it. Now you're going to try and reach for a better feeling thought. So you might think, well, other people are alone and I guess they're okay. And so you would say, well, does that feel better? That kind of feels the same. So, so then you might create, like, you might think, well, what could I think that would make me feel a little bit better? Well, I know they say that we will be together again. So that makes me feel a little bit better. But I don't know if I really believe that. So that's a little bit worse. So you can see it's kind of a tricky process that you have to go through. But I found one that's easier. So do you mind if I share it, William?
No, please go ahead.
So I was looking online. I was going to actually copy this process out that I just explained to you, better or worse kind of thinking. But I stumbled on this other process, and it's so fit with the way I think about things. And I'm hoping it's helpful to all of our friends here because it's so easy and it doesn't involve anything difficult, and you can do it anytime, all the time. And it really, really, really is guaranteed to help you feel better. And when you feel better, I found the better I felt, the easier it was for me to feel Paul with me. And I know people say at your deepest grief, you feel them, and that's fine. That's fine. But I didn't want to live in my deepest grief. I wanted to feel him. I wanted to be happy again. And I ran into William in one of these other groups, and he was saying he was feeling happier with his wife. And I thought, well, if he can do it, he really gave me an example of somebody who was doing what I was trying to do. So I'm going to just share this process with you. And this is not mine. I didn't make this up, but in going online and trying to research some more of Abraham's processes, I found this guy. I'll put this link in the chat when we're done here in our group chat. But I don't know this guy. I just read what he wrote online. I'm not recommending him or not recommending him. I'm just saying that I think he has services where he helps people. But that aside, I'm just saying I don't know him. I just ran across him this morning online. So his name is Kyle Greenfield, and he has a website called thejoywithin.org. Thejoywithin.org. And he had a little three-part meditation that I thought was so easy. It was three things. And he said he recommends doing this. He recommends saying each part of the meditation out loud, out loud first, then in a whisper, and then in your head. And according to him, I'm just going to share this with you. I don't know. I never even tried this. I just stumbled on this an hour ago. But he said it's like an echo, like hello, hello, hello. So his idea is it becomes embedded. But that aside, his whole thing is based on thank you. And a long time ago, I read that this person had said online, somebody online said, the only prayer they have is thank you. And so I like things that are very simple and easy. And so that's my only prayer ever. Thank you. I always turn my attention to what I can be grateful for, which is the happy things. We're all grateful for the happy things, but things to appreciate can include things that we really didn't want to happen, but we can find something in those to appreciate. So I liked his thank you idea. And here's the three-part meditation. Again, I'll put this in the chat so you don't have to copy anything down. But it's just thank you. Number one, thank you for helping me. Thank you for expanding me. And thank you for inspiring me. And then he said, what you can do is I would write these things down. He said you could just say them aloud. I don't know. But I think this works for a journal prompt. It's so easy. So I wrote down some examples. These are my examples. Okay. They don't have to be your thank you things, but these are what I came up with. Thank you for helping me appreciate our love more than ever before. Thank you for helping me understand that you are with me always. Thank you for helping me to know that we are together always. So, for the second one, thank you for expanding me. Expanding me is kind of a woo woo term, but let's just go with it for the moment. Thank you for expanding me so I can better understand what happens when we die. Thank you for expanding me and my capacity for loving. Thank you for expanding me and my ability to move forward in this new phase of our relationship. And the third one was thank you for inspiring me. So I wrote, thank you for inspiring me to always, and this is about Paul. Thank you. All of these are about Paul, but thank you for inspiring me to always manage things in a calm and measured way, because that's the way he was. In all the many years I knew him, I never knew him to lose his temper or fly off the handle or anything. And I always admired that about him. Thank you for inspiring me to be as brave as you were when you were ill. I remember thanking him in person for that. Thank you for inspiring me to show appreciation and love to others. And there's two more parts I just want to talk about, if it's okay, William, if I can, and then I'll shut up. So Abraham also says, if you're thinking about or talking about something unwanted, like you're worried about something, you can talk about it. Abraham never says you don't, ignore or deny or whatever the things you don't want. But if you're talking about things unwanted, like your worries, that you talk about them in very general tones. Like, Paul has cancer. I'm so worried about that. That's a very general way of looking at it. Um, or here's some examples that I wrote down relative to that little meditation thing. Thank you for these are general, very general. Thank you for choosing me out of all the other women in the universe. Thank you for carrying me, for doing everything in your power to help me feel safe, secure, and loved. Thank you for being so kind and generous to me, my kids, and my ex, Frank, and his family. Loving you did not mean I had to leave anyone out, and for that, I will always be most grateful. Those are very general things. So Abraham says when you're talking about something you really want, you want to talk in specifics and fill in as much sensory detail as possible. So here's some specifics. I generated a whole list. I'll just share a few. Um, of course, this is all related to Paul. Thank you for driving past our high school with me and then singing our alma mater at the top of our lungs. That we really did that. Thank you for always bringing me flowers and candy every time you met me at the airport. Thank you for being patient with me when I first moved to live with you in Michigan and was homesick for my kids. Those are way more specific. And so when you put when you add specific, I can't say it. When you are specific about the things that you want, that you admire and love about your sweetheart, that helps you feel better. And you don't have to say, well, you don't have to worry about they're not here physically part. You can use your memories when you can get to the point where they don't slice you to ribbons. You can use your memories to thank them for all the things. And then I have 3 pages. I kept going. I have 3 pages of things. Thank you for bringing me coffee every morning. Thank you for picking me up in the rain when I was out on my walk and the heavens opened out and your red truck pulled up next to me and I jumped in. All the things. And it's so exciting because you can relive all the things that you enjoyed and hold dear and precious with them, and knowing that they never went away, that you can experience them again. And then it lifts your spirits, and it lifts mine anyway and helps me feel better. That's all.
No, I agree. And this whole thing, it was excellent. This whole thing is an example of reframing. in the sense that you're reframing your thoughts, your mind from things you have to be things you have to be angry or sad about to things you have to be grateful and happy about. Okay, so that's like a redirection, rather. That's like redirecting your
Yes.
thoughts
That's what
towards,
they call it. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So that's a great example of the redirection when you find yourself thinking in the thoughts that kind of bring you down or make you sad or make you frustrated, redirecting them into other thoughts that help you and make you feel elated and make you feel happy. And that's kind of a general mental framework to develop, and that is the habit of doing this. The habit of, instead of like going into and wallowing in the we'll just call them like negative thoughts, is the habit of moving your thoughts in your mind towards the things that make you happy. So that I appreciate that. That's a very good process to use to develop the habit and the skill of redirecting your thoughts into a happier domain. And so something else I want to bring into this is more along the reframing part. And so a lot of the framing that goes on in these relationships is framed as you were saying earlier, is uh, I so the framing is that that a lot of people are continually, and this, I'm not saying this is a bad thing or that it's negative or anything like that. I'm just stating it as a fact. They're trying to bring their current relationship with their partner into the same format as their prior relationship with their partner in the following ways. Uh, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with trying to do these things, not at all. But it's trying to manifest them physically in dreams, trying to manifest them physically in astral projections or out of body experiences, trying to hear their voice, trying to discern their mental interaction with their partners in a way where it's specifically they can distinguish between their voice, mental voice, and their between the person and their partner on the other side, to be able to distinguish between those things in the same manner that we used to have here. Okay, so they are trying to remanifest or recreate the same type of physical communication that we had in while they were here. They're trying to recreate that, and I've done this myself, trying to recreate that in this new form of the relationship. And something I kind of wanted to get into after you suggested this topic, I kind of wanted to get into here is that uh, over the past 8 or 9 years, 8 years of this group, I have found that successfully bringing them into those same physical patterns is a rare occurrence. It only rarely happens, and it's it's in my opinion that the a good way to go forward is to just reframe all that. Is to just reframe your because if you think it will never be as good as it was unless it meets these old parameters and this old style of interacting with your partner, that can lead, and I have seen in a group it does lead to disappointment and frustration and kind of angst and worry because they don't get the type of consistent or solid success at doing that they would like. And so I'll give you an example of this that I noticed recently. Somebody in the group said that uh, I think a couple of people did that they're having trouble discerning when their partner is talking to them or when they're just thinking their own thoughts. that they can't discern those two things. And that's something that they want to be able to do better. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try to do that. That's fine. But I don't even try to do that because I've reframed it out of a problem. Okay. Because I've reframed it in a way in my mind, it's not even something I need to worry about or think about. And that is the way I reframed it is that Irene and I are constantly communicating in a unified way to each other, in a uh, more intertwined way where we can't really discern whose thought it is. Okay. And so I have had many experiences, and I've talked to the group about these, where I'm having an experience where I'm imagining something. I'm imagining a conversation with Irene, and boom, I get a sign or a synchronicity of that very thing, happening in a physical world where Irene is showing me we were having that conversation. We were actually having that conversation. I have almost zero distinction. I mean, the only distinction I have when I think Irene is possibly saying something to me, it isn't words, it isn't a sentence, and it isn't anything like that. It's not in her voice. It's. I don't see her face saying it. It's like a sensation, like a physical sensation of happiness. Okay, but that's after a long time of doing this, and that's after me setting aside the idea that I should be trying to recreate that physical distinction between us of identifying who's doing what, who's saying what, who's thinking what. Okay. So I've reframed that out of being a problem. I just accept we are in constant communication. Okay. And we are so intertwined, so deeply intertwined that trying to draw out whose thought this is, whose thought that is 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 basically almost an impossible task, because we're so in union and in concert with our thoughts. And so that's an example. And tell me what you think of it, or an example for you.
Yeah, well, as you're talking, I'm thinking that when people set up those parameters for themselves, or those expectations is a better word for themselves, it it's just leads to, well, for myself, it leads to frustration and disappointment, and also like a rumination, like, I don't know, is it, and you're not going to get an answer. So, so instead of torturing myself, I've learned from you. I always say this, William, I've learned so much from you. I've learned from you not, to set that aside. There's not a definitive answer for that. So let's look at it in a way that feels good. Let's look at it in a way that supports our loving bond. Let's look at it in a way that has me enjoying Paul and my love for him and our romance to its fullest. Because for me, that's what grief did for me. Grief interfered with that, and I realize everybody doesn't agree with that, and that's fine. Everybody has their own way of dealing with it and their own way of regarding it, by the way. A lot of people, they get some satisfaction out of kind of mentally trying to sort it out and ruminate about it. I don't. That just ties me up in knots. And I like to get, what I like for myself is I like to arrive at a mental construct that's easy to remember, that supports me, that feels loving to me as well as to Paul and me. So those are the kinds of things that I aim for.
Right.
And anything that's too complicated, and I did all the complicated things in the beginning. I did all the things. And I just felt that a lot of them were not, for me, they didn't yield the results I was looking for, which can cause people to go into even deeper grief. Like, oh my God, what if all this is crap and none of it's real? And, and it's easy to spiral. And that's what Abraham also says in their book about the astonishing, I forgot what it's called. Oh, the astonishing power of emotions is that once you have a thought, like you have a thought, then then I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg, the thought or the emotion. But you have an emotion that's connected to a thought, and then if it's painful, and it's easy for us, for some reason, I don't know, the way our thoughts are set up, the way our minds are set up, it's easy for us to think the next thought that's in tandem with that. Maybe that's law of attraction. The one thought attracts another thought that's similar and similar and similar and similar. And so for me, when I began to ruminate about that, like, I don't know, could that be Paul's voice? What if it's not Paul's? What if I'm imagining it? Oh no. Well, then that means none of this is real. Oh no, if none of this is real, he's not. And I can just go right down what our friends used to call, the rabbit hole, or or the whack-a-mole game, where then you make peace with that and something else comes up. But usually it's related, for me, it's related to this rumination, like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, because I don't have
Right.
the answers. And it's the kind of thing that nobody has an exact answer for.
And here's, and that's an excellent point. And here's how I have reframed that. I have reframed that this way, and I want to thank Kim LaCapria. I know she doesn't mind us saying her name publicly. She's a public figure, and she's out with all this. Uh, and that is the frame is this, and so it's, would I do this if I knew there wasn't an afterlife? Would I still be doing this? Yes, I would still be doing this very thing. I
Yes,
would still be doing exactly what I'm doing now, and that takes all of the worry for me. It takes all the concerns and worry about whether or not there's an afterlife, whether or not Irene exists or not. I'm not even concerned about any of that anymore. Not that I really ever was, but it's
yes,
because I would live this way no matter what. This is
yes,
my decision for my life going forward, uh, in honor and in love. And at least, even if I'm just pretending that I'm interacting with, Irene, even if all of those signs and synchronicities are just coincidences, even if I am cognitively biased towards all of this, I don't care. I really don't care because I would be living this way anyway. Okay. Why is that? It's the only way I can be happy in this life. It's the only way that I can go forward. It's the only path open to me where I get to completely hold on to what I have of Irene and expand that love and feel that love and enjoy her for the rest of my life, whether she exists or not. That's the only way
right.
forward for me. And so that may not be the proper reframing for everybody. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm saying I found a way to frame it to where that doesn't even concern me. The questions about the afterlife and all that type of stuff, whether or not I'm delusional or hallucinating or whatever, it doesn't even concern me. I don't care. Okay. And so that's another good example of how reframing what's an issue that's bothering you or causing you trouble or frustration or whatever, you reframe it and it just goes away. It's just not even a problem anymore.
Yes,
So another we might be thinking of several here, but another framing issue from recent conversations with people is the framing of manifestation. Okay, in this term, why am I manifesting all these problems with the appliances in my house? Why am I manifesting, the trouble with my car or health issues or whatever? Am I manifesting that? Are there evil entities influencing me? I'm not disregarding any way that anybody looks at that. What I'm suggesting is there's a different way to frame all of that where it's just not a problem. And I'll give you another example. So this is like early in my and Irene's relationship. I developed this framework, and this framework is this: everything that occurs in my life, whether I think it's good or bad, occurs for my greater and eventual benefit, and occurs for mine and Irene's relationship eventual betterment. And so the way I look at this now is that it doesn't matter what happens in my life. It doesn't really matter because I don't know what is required to reach the goal of our best most beautiful and amazing eternal afterlife relationship and environment. I don't know what's required of me to get there. I assume I have developed a mental framework that everything I go through, every single thing, is leading me to that point. Okay. And so I'm going to give a really big example of how something incredibly troubling from a different perspective happened in my life that eventually led to good stuff. And that is, I had this story. Most people are familiar with the story of when 3 years ago, somebody in this house who was living in this house almost killed my daughter. And it was a very brutal attack and a very unexpected attack. The guy suffered a psychotic break and almost successfully killed her. And I had to go in and pry the guy off of her and basically hold him at gunpoint to keep him at bay until the police got there. Now, I'm saying this not to toot my own horn, but there was nothing about that scenario at the time that bothered me at all. I wasn't upset. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. Uh, None of those things. I experienced none of that. I wasn't in shock. There was no adrenaline pouring through my body. I was basically when I got woke up into the situation, because I was trying to go to sleep. My thought was, oh my God, what is this going to be about? You know, this is a crazy thing to happen. Very interesting, crazy thing is going on right now. And I realized I had like mastered the framing issue because I at the time I had fully gone into the frame of when people die, they are okay. They're in the afterlife. So I'm not worried about people who die. Okay. I know they'll be fine. And then after they die, they'll be absolutely fine. And I know, and I believed, or my framework is that however this turns out, it's going to be for my eventual benefit and for the benefit of me and Irene and who knows who else. Well, I mean, that was like a year of, after that happened, a year of all of this crazy stuff going on at the house. And by crazy, I mean, my grandson was really upset. My daughter had her physical therapy and issues because of her injuries and the psychological pain and trauma she was going through about this guy she'd loved for mostly her whole life had done this to her. And so where are we at today? Where we're at today is she has met and married a man who is really a good guy. She's madly in love with him. They have a wonderful relationship. She and he have largely moved out of this house, which leaves me here exactly like I like to be, mostly by myself. You know, I love it. They left me. They couldn't take the dogs with them, so I got the dogs, which I love the dogs. I love interacting with the dogs, and they and because of her relationship with this new guy, uh, well, I'll just go ahead and say it. I don't think she'd really mind. um, well, I'll just put it this way: they have made other people extremely happy by what they have, but by what the two of them have been able to offer other people in completely unexpected ways that would have never happened had she not gotten separated. And I believe the only way she could have ever gotten separated from this guy was for a huge event like that to happen. Okay. So we're all doing excellent. My grandson is doing excellent. And we have all benefited in ways that there was no way to foresee in the beginning. There was absolutely no way to foresee from that tragic, horrible event, all of this good coming from it. And so I could give you 100 examples of this kind of thing happening where I could have spent, a lot of time in absolute mental anguish, in pain, in suffering. Uh, that could have, I could have spent my life that way. And maybe I would have ended up at the same point. I don't know. But here it is. I got to enjoy all of that time because because I had a framework that this was whatever happens is what is eventually best for everybody involved. For everybody involved, it's what's best. What do you think about that, Mary Beth?
Yes, I think, first of all, thank you for sharing that. Those of us who were in the group at that time were, of course, astonished and quite concerned for your daughter and all the people involved. And I can't really speak for everybody, but but we were just also astonished at your ability to just go with it. I mean, you didn't freak out. You didn't. It was amazing, and I really took my cue from you on that. So, I mean, moving forward in my life. So that because that was an extreme example. I mean, even the mildest of mild people might have just flipped their lid at that point. Seeing all of that unfold. But because you had that belief system, that knowing in place ahead of time, you just relied on what you already knew, what you had already experienced. And you brought it to one of the most dramatic and really tragic scenes involving someone you love so much, namely your daughter. And I know you also loved her partner at the time, and so it's painful to see somebody, fall apart at the seams in front of everybody and do something violent. And you maintained your calm, and I thought, man, oh man, and it was genuine. It wasn't like you were faking or you were just trying to be spiritual or anything like that. It was really real. And I know that some of the people I spoke with said, wow, that William is really something else. And you set an example for us. And for that, I'm very, very thankful. And to go back to something you said earlier, I mean, just in the segment you just talked about, but in the beginning you talked about the mindset that you don't worry about any of the afterlife stuff, because even if there weren't, and we know that there is, and we have full knowledge of that. But I remember years ago, and this may have been after you connected with Kim, but you said, if I close my eyes now, it's one of two things are going to happen. Close my eyes in death. One of two things are going to happen. I'm going to wake up in Irene's arms, or there's going to be nothing. And either way, it doesn't matter. Either way, I'm in love with her. Either way, I want to continue our relationship now until the day when I do close my eyes on earth for forever. And so that was something I adopted too. I decided I remember thinking, if I if I died and woke up on the other side, or there was no other side, but there was a greeter to tell me, listen, the afterlife is, pure bunk. There's nothing. I wouldn't say to myself, oh, dang, I should have dated other people. No, there, there is no other person for me than Paul. And so that I like those things that give me peace and serenity that I can carry around with me all the time. I like that. I don't like, again, other people really love, the rumination or the mental masturbation, whatever you want to call it, where they're turning ideas over and over and over. And maybe that's their way of getting to a place of, a peaceful way of thinking about things. But I don't go there. So I look for things that are absolute. Another thing you said, this is kind of a reframing too. And this is something I worried about when Paul died, because I read some books about reincarnation, which just threw me for a loop. I believe in reincarnation, but it's such an enormous subject. We have no idea what really will happen to us. And I was so worried. Oh no, oh no. What if I die and then Paul already reincarnated? Oh, what if I died and Paul found a better person, a better, deeper soulmate than me, and I'm not with him? And I mean, I could go right down that rabbit hole with the best of them. But what I learned to do was find a way to think about it that served me now. And so I would think, well, Paul's not the boss of me. I can be in love with him no matter what for forever and ever, even if he chose somebody else. And you know what? That's what really happened in real life. Because in real life, when Paul and I met up in high school and had our beautiful little high school romance, which was brief, but I was totally in love with him and never fell out of love with him. And then 35 years later, when we connected again, it was the same. It was the same. So, I just know that that love is not going anywhere, and I don't want to be with anyone else. And so I'm at peace with those kinds of things. So all of those things, serve me well. And by the way, going back to the very, very, very beginning of this meeting, that's not to say that the grief and the pain are wrong or that they don't exist or anything. It's not like you're like people have said to me, well, Mary Beth, you can't push down your grief. You can't ignore it because then it will come back to, bite you. And I remember thinking, I ignore it. It's like a mountain lion took me in its mouth and I felt beat up by it. I don't know how people ignore grief or how they stuff it down because it loomed large, the largest thing in my life, except my love for Paul. That was larger, but the pain was overwhelming. So I don't know how people ignore or deny it. So I knew it was there, but as Abraham says, you don't want to force your thoughts in certain directions. You just want to guide your thoughts in other directions. And even though the pain is here, there's always a parallel over here that serves you better. And they also say what you said, William, that when you are feeling well, like after that um, situation with your daughter, the way it unfolded and everything, when you're calm in yourself and you're at peace with yourself and you know yourself and what you want for yourself, and then you just shine that out to everybody, even if you don't want to, you just feel like you feel good. And that's why, the spiritual groups, and again, not to put down spiritual groups, they always say that our purpose here is to help other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. Abraham says, if you want to be an uplifter, be an uplifter. If you don't want to be an uplifter, don't be an uplifter. Do whatever feels good to you. But I found that when you feel good inside yourself and when you've used your thoughts to resolve a lot of these quagmires along the way, then automatically for myself, again, speaking for myself, automatically I feel generous and magnanimous to other people. It's fun to help other people. It feels good. It's another feel good thing for me. So that's why I'm a big proponent of, you know, observing your thoughts and not judging them. You're not bad if you have a painful thought, for God's sake. But, thinking maybe there's a different way of looking at this or thinking about it that better serves me and my sweetheart.
Yeah, absolutely 100%. And that's really the whole thrust of this is that it can look like there's it can look like this type of thing of redirecting your thoughts and reframing how you think about things is it has no power over the cold hard fact that they're not in your physical presence anymore. But Mary Beth and I are, examples that that's not necessarily true. At least not necessarily true. That you can develop a really based on doing that, you can develop a very beautiful and satisfying and joyful uh, relationship with your partner. That doesn't. It's like I would say that I never seriously thought that I was going to be able to physically manifest Irene. I never seriously thought that I would ever actually have a. I mean, back in the first year, I never thought I would ever. I never seriously thought I'd have an astral projection with her. Uh, but I mean, it turned out I did, and you never know what's going to happen. But you have to live your life between things happening. You have to find a way to live your life between things happening. And what I have found is that whether or not I can hold Irene or hear her voice or kiss her lips, I can bask in the amazing beauty of her presence that runs throughout my body, runs throughout my mind and my psychology, throughout my emotions and my heart. I can bask in that. And it's so good. It's so beautiful to have that. And I would be doing that, like I said, whether I thought there was an afterlife or not. This is my decision. And That's I would never want to soil that. I would never like people you'll talk about might think about, well, I'm young and am I going to live my life alone? And it's like, my thought on that is you do what you need to do and what you feel is best of you. Of course, do those things. But I never for a second thought about not having a relationship after my first wife. I never thought about for a second about not having another relationship after my second wife. But there is no way I would ever, because it would take, I mean, another relationship besides the fact that it just absolutely repulses me, you know, and I would feel like I was completely betraying Irene. It would just take too much time and attention away from thinking about Irene. You know, that's why I don't like to go to, like family gatherings so much, and I don't like the much of a social life. And I prefer people to not really live here with me is because it just takes too much time away from this basking in the beautiful love I have for Irene and in our love together. There are just thoughts that I can have. There are things that she wrote in her journal about me that just send me through the moon every time. I was like, oh my God. And so here's the thing. Here's another reframing for you is like, what are we going to do for the rest of our lives? And am I fulfilling my purpose? And are there things for me to do? And people think about that kind of stuff and worry about that kind of stuff. And my reframing about that is I've already won. I've already won all there is to win out of this life. I found the person. I found my person. And so few people in this world have ever found their person. Have ever found that person that is their like perfect soulmate match? But I found her, and not only did I find her, we had a relationship. She loved me back. She considered me the same. It's just that is so rare. It's like, you know, I don't know what else I can possibly do in life that comes anywhere close to achieving that. To me, that's the crowning achievement. It makes me, if I die and just wink out of existence, I've achieved as much in my mind as any human can achieve, can hope to achieve in this life by having met that person, been in love with them, have a relationship, and spent at least some, for us, it was quite a bit, some, and the people listening to this in the group, they know what I'm talking about. Some of that beautiful, unbelievable, intimate time with your partner where the whole universe seems to stop to exist. Time comes to a screeching halt, and you're just in this place of pure bliss, of happiness and joy at every level with them. And we've experienced that. And to me, there's nothing that even comes close to that. What do you think, Mary Beth?
Well, I think you know what I think. I think the same thing. My Paul has been passed over 10 years now. And I almost every day I think, I cannot believe that I connected up with Paul Mank. I used to tell him, "You're the Paul Mank." I can't. He say, "Well, yeah." It's like, it's just, it's still unbelievable to me. I feel like I'm 17 years old again, and Paul Mac asked me out, Paul Mac. Oh, I'm married to Paul. I'm married forever to Paul Mank. Oh my God. And then and I think for myself going back to the idea of, the reframing of the thoughts thing when you're moving into just a list of thank yous. I could fill notebook after notebook with thank yous related to Paul. And and it's fun. It's fun. That's what I want to convey to everybody. Doing that kind of thing, making a list of, thank you for this, thank you for that. And then it begins to trigger other thoughts. The comedian Carol Burnett, everybody knows who Carol Burnett is. I love reading memoirs from people, and she wrote 3 memoirs. One memoir about her show business life, one memoir about her daughter who had brain cancer, and they wrote a Broadway play together, and her daughter did pass, and she wrote a book about that. But the other book was she wrote a book about, she went back to the boarding house where her parents lived. They were both alcoholics, and she ended up living down the hall with her grandmother, who could take care of her because she was not an alcoholic, but she was a hoarder. And the whole apartment you could barely even fit in, you know. But she said that and so she actually, in order to do the book, she went back to the place and looked at the apartment, and it didn't look exactly the same. But she said in the writing process that all of a sudden all these memories came up. She remembered little tiny things about this and that, and what something smelled like, and what she, the voices of the people down the hall, and like all these things that she recounted. And I think that that process happens when we just write a list of thank yous to our partner that are very specific. And when you begin that, and when the memories don't hurt anymore, because initially they can hurt because you think you've lost it all. People on traditional grief groups, they'll say, "Oh my, we just had our first grandchild. My husband will never experience that." I don't write comments. I just read through these things, but I want to say to them, "No, he's right there. He's right there experiencing them. He's experiencing your grandchild." So anyway, I think that when the memory thing is not painful, and you can remember your memories, and you can harvest those for your imaginary, and we've talked about that, where you close your eyes and you imagine you're with them in these different scenes. But when you write thank yous out, thank you for this, thank you for that, I love you for this, I love you for that, I just cherish you so much for this. It's so much fun, and it's such an easy way to elevate yourself, and you tip the scale to the side of appreciation and gratitude, rather than I'm so sad for this horrific loss that I've suffered and I'll never see him again.
Yeah.
And even people have said, well, I know I'm going to see him again, but that doesn't stop me from feeling sad. I want him here right this, as Abraham would say, this red hot minute. So I think that when you write out all the thank yous, you just put your whole being, your mind and your heart, first of all, of course, on them, our beloved sweethearts, but also it reminds you of how fortunate, oh my God, how very fortunate you are that this person with all these gorgeous attributes are, want you. They want you. They want you in their heart. They want you in their life just as much as you want them. And it's their attributes and the times you spent together and the laughs you had and the romance, no matter how the most intimate detail you can share, you don't have to share it with the world unless you want to, but you can write it all down. It's just every sentence starts with thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, or I love you because. And that's like a very easy way to be. Once you have a technique or a strategy, so to speak, for helping yourself when you get really upset, and you can say, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm just going to write some more in my thank you book, whatever. Uh, I think that's helpful because sometimes when people are so mired in grief, it feels like you're drowning and it feels like you don't even have the strength to help yourself. You don't even know how to help yourself. I didn't at first, at least. It was so massively painful. And when you have a technique as simple as just open that notebook that's right by your bedside, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I remember this, I remember that, I remember this, I remember that. Uh, I love you for this. I love you for that. That's really very exciting. Also, before we run out of time, of course, well, we have an hour if we want to go 2 hours, but I also want to talk about, if you don't mind, the Paul and I used to go like this: permission to change topics, and then the other person had to say permission granted.
Permission granted.
Thank you, William. It's one of those little in jokes that people have. We'd be at dinner and he'd be talking about something. Permission to change topic, permission granted. We always granted each other the permission. Anyway, what I want to talk about, which is a tiny bit related to this, not exactly, but a little bit related, is the power of anticipation. Years ago, this is a little story outside of Paul and outside of the afterlife realm, because this is before Paul and I got together the second time. And everybody knows I love puppetry and I use it in my teaching and all that. And I was a writer for, when books were in style and education books for teachers anyway. And I had a column in a national teaching magazine. At one point in time, the magazine asked all the writers if they would like to write a column or interview somebody who they felt was instrumental in children's education, like an education leader. And I immediately thought of Sherry Lewis, the puppeteer, because at the time, this is going back over 30 years ago, and at the time she had a PBS show. Uh, what was it called? Lamb Chops Play Along, I think it was called. And so I contacted her agent and I got a phone interview with her. And it was very, very exciting because, of course, she's one of the best ever and she's a pioneer on television. And it was very exciting to talk with her. And then, so I did the article. And then the article came out, and then I got a phone call, and I didn't know who it was. And the woman said, this is before cell phones, by the way. And the woman said, this is Sherry Lewis's assistant. She would like to meet with you in New York for breakfast if you have the time. I was like, of course, any day. What day? What time? And so I went into New York and met Sherry Lewis for about an hour. And we talked a bit about what she wanted was never came true. It ended up not coming true. But she was considering having me write a children's book, which would have been the autobiography of Lamb Chop, because Lamb Chop was considered to be a little child in a family, the puppet Lamb Chop. But Lamb Chop had an extraordinary life because Lamb Chop met all these different presidents. Lamb Chop was in the Thanksgiving Day parade on television, all the things. And I was excited over the moon. And we were talking about she and I were talking about what really motivates people. And I don't know where this came from. I never had thought about it before, but out of my mouth, I said, well, I think anticipation does. That motivates people because it's something to look forward to, something to hang your hat on, something to hope for, something wonderful. Of course, we don't want to, it's not the same as dreading something that's going to happen, but it's all the happy things, like the happy anticipation. If you celebrate Christmas the night before Christmas, those kinds of things. And after I said it, I'm having, I'm trying to hold my composure with her and sound halfway intelligent. And on the way home, I had a long train ride home, and I thought, I don't even know where that came from. But now, all these many years later, since Paul passed, the idea of anticipation, the notion of anticipation, is very big in helping me to have this most fabulous transdimensional romance. Because I can imagine anything to anticipate. The world is our oyster, and anything we want in the Imaginarium, anything we lived before, we can anticipate having again. Annie Nanji tells us that, and I believe her, because even though she's only one person in the afterlife, she knows a whole bunch of other people in the afterlife who have experienced things, recreating events that they had on Earth in better and more beautiful ways. So there's that anticipation and all the new things we can anticipate. And it just makes me so excited to think that all the anticipations, large and I'm using it as a noun, the anticipations, large and small, they all await us. I always tell Paul, I say, oh, we can do this and that and this and that, except eons, only eons after we've been making love. Then we can do the other things, maybe. But the idea of anticipation always brings such joy to my heart because in addition to planning things, there are things we don't even know we can do until we get there. So isn't that exciting?
Oh yeah, that's one of the great. I'm so glad you brought that up. That's I often say on Reddit, people ask me if I fear death. I said, or do you not enjoy life? Why are you always talking about the afterlife? And I greatly enjoy my life now, but I enthusiastically anticipate what is to come. And that is, what Irene and I can do in the afterlife. And then, well, Mary Beth, I I spend my time creating afterlife videos, and that is little depictions of things that we can do and imagine and participate in the afterlife. You know, just it's just it's unlimited. Your imagination is unlimited, and you can imagine anything you want, to do in the afterlife. So of course, I'm constantly imagining things for me and Irene to do, and imagining fun scenarios and fun things to do. And that's like, I mean, that's exactly right. You're talking about how that is highly motivational. It is. What is the motivation for me making those videos or any of the videos that I've made for this group? It is my anticipation of what, not just myself, but what everybody in this group has to look forward to. And it really doesn't matter if I'm looking at a video or a part of a video that's representative of me and Irene. Watching other people like meet
Yes.
their partners in the afterlife just fills me with joy. It fills me with happiness, to see all these people, to visualize, to have a visual representation of these people I care about fulfilling their greatest hope, their greatest desire to be with their partner again in the afterlife. And so it's highly motivational. It gives me a lot of excitement, and the anticipation of all that is, it's like people have talked about the anticipation of coming to the meetings, coming to the Zoom meetings. They highly anticipate that. I anticipate it. And it gives me and there's also the anticipation, and I think this does bleed into the other subject, is that you never know what's going to happen in your life going forward. You never know what kind of experience you will have, what kind of thoughts you will have, what kind of realizations you will have. Uh, it's just, instead, and this comes back to reframing a little bit, and that's, you could look at that with dread, or you can look at it with great anticipation. You can look at it with pain, or you can look at it with joy. Uh, and so this is when you reframe life, both your life here that way and what is to come that way, it turns a dread into a joy. And that's, and you have to, if a person decides to try to do this and to, guide their thoughts that way and reframe their thoughts that way, um, you have to allow, it could be a very difficult process. It could be a long process of training yourself to think a different way, training yourself to point your thoughts in a different way, and to just think about what's going on a different way so that you can live in joyous anticipation of what is to come. Uh, so, another thing that I wanted to, if I can pull this out of my mind, uh, one of the things, I'm going to go back to permission to go back to the other topic for just a second.
Permission to go back.
Okay. So,
Oh
so
no, it's
one,
part of the thing.
another thing I wanted to touch upon was, there are several things in the afterlife community in general, and for people, especially in our group, that are going through this, that can cause them a lot of frustration and angst and worry. And so, like, one of those things is, uh, maybe I could just go through one of those things is, the concept that we're here to learn some things, and like spiritual growth or lessons, or I know neither you or I really like thinking about things like that, in particular. But yet you and I have done a lot of personal growth in our path, what you call personal growth in your path, rearranging our psychology. And like what we're talking about right now, somebody might call spiritual growth, they might call it psychological growth, whatever. So the way that I reframe that, because trying to figure all that stuff out, what am I supposed to learn here? What kind of changes am I supposed to make in myself? How can I be higher vibrational? How can I, achieve whatever level or I want to achieve to, be with my partner, or to be happy with my partner when we cross over, to be on a high level or high plane. Is I reframed all that in my mind. And the way I reframed all that in my mind is this, is anything that I'm supposed to learn, anything that any experience that I'm supposed to have to shift my psychology around, or to whatever, is just something that's going to naturally occur. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to try and figure it out. What am I supposed to learn from this? Uh, because in my experience, that just leads to a whole bunch of confusion, a whole bunch of frustration, and it's not really that productive. No sooner do you might think, well, I learned this, and then something happens. You go, well, I thought I was supposed to learn this over here, or haven't I already learned this? Or so I just reframed all that in a very easy way to do it. Is that if my path towards Irene and our eternal happily ever after requires going through something and requires a shift in my thought in any way, it will just happen because that's the course I have set. I have set that course. That is my inner goal and desire. And I just trust that it will happen. And I've often told, talking to whoever, if you want me to do this thing or learn this thing, you're either going to have to beat me, spell it out and beat me over the head with it. Okay. Or you're just going to have to make it happen because I'm not going to worry about it. I am not going to concern myself about it. I am just going to concern myself with one specific thing, and that is loving my wife. That is all I'm going to concern myself with. I'm concerned myself with because I enjoy it. I enjoy it more than anything. Okay, is like you were talking about writing down the thank yous, for Paul. It's I enjoy walking around I actually walk around the house constantly telling Irene thank you, constantly telling her thank you for coming into my life, constantly thanking her for bringing her children into my life, thanking for her for finding this house, thanking her for loving me, for putting up with me, for long nights of conversation with me, of being interested in what I do, in watching
Yes.
shows with me, in going on walks with me, of saying the things that she said to me and writing the things in her journal that she wrote in there. I am constantly thanking her for those things, and uh, I'm constantly thinking of well, let's think of a new adventure to go on in the afterlife. We can just plan it out. It's like you're writing notes. This is what we want to do in the afterlife. It's just enjoyable to do. It's just fun to do. And thanking her for being my partner, for being my wife, for agreeing to marry me. I'm constantly doing that. And the thing is that I refuse. I have the framework in my mind that nothing is going to deter me from that track. Nothing. That everything that happens is on that track. Whether I can see it now or not, I'm like going, what the hell is this all about? You know, it doesn't matter. My immediate thought is somehow, some way, this is what I have to go through. This is what has to happen to get where I want to go. For me and Irene to get where we want to go, this is what's to happen. If I'm supposed to think of something, I will think of it. Somebody can put the thought in my head. That's the thing. I might deal with the so-called spirit guides. If you want me to think of something or do whatever, put it in my head. Beat me over the head with it. If something I absolutely have to do, it'll be something that I can't stop myself from doing. Okay.
Mm.
So, in other words, I've resolved all of that worry about what am I supposed to do here? What lessons am I supposed to learn? What experiences am I supposed to have? Is I just expect it to all come to me. If it's something I need to go through or whatever, it will just all come to me and I'll do it. So I'm not worried about it whatsoever. Another thing that people worry about, let me get into this real quick, is the concern about, you know, negative or evil entities interfering with us and screwing up our lives is I just reframed all that in that there's nothing any entity can do to me that isn't something I need to go through on my path. They cannot deter me from that path because I am locked onto it like a bulldog. Even if such beings are trying to do it, they can't knock me off that path. Is as I am doggedly set on that path. So I'm not concerned about that. I don't stop and think, is that some evil spirit? I don't care. There's nothing they can do to deter me. There's nothing that any person in this world can do to deter me. There's nothing any person in the next world that can do anything to deter Irene and me from pursuing this path or get us off of it or make us make a detour, because our my love for Irene does not depend on things going a certain way. It does not depend on, this or that happening. It does not depend on her having a physical body. It doesn't depend on her being able to speak to me in a voice that I can hear. It doesn't depend on her showing up in dreams. It doesn't depend on astral projections. It doesn't depend on me going to a medium. It doesn't depend on any of those things because it's all inside of me. Okay, it's all inside of me. So go ahead. Did you have some comments there? Please do.
No, I was just going to say in the very end of that, I was thinking about everything you say. I mentally transcribe into my life or transpose rather into my life and thinking about it with Paul. And that was that I said this earlier in this video, but that exactly what you just said about there's nothing that can deter you. The only, in the beginning I worried, I said this, what if he doesn't love me anymore? What if he found, and I just thought, well, that can't stop me from loving him. That doesn't take away uh, all the love that we shared when he was here. And by the way, moving my thoughts in that direction makes me see how absurd it is that Paul has someone else. Of course he doesn't, right? He told me, well, I mean, when he was here, he wasn't telling me there's no one else. I didn't think so. We were together like 24/7. But what I mean is that he said to me, my time with you was best years of my life. And right before he died, he said, I think this whole thing, meaning the cancer journey, this whole thing brought us even closer together than ever. So he told me I know that that was absurd. So to think that he got on the other side and went, oh, there you are. That's just absurd to me. That, and also you said something, we didn't bring it up in this meeting, but you have said that, there's a possibility, we don't, who knows, that, there's infinite versions of us, and you're just seeking the one that you're just seeking the version of Irene that's massively in love with you. So that was a comfort to me. I thought, yeah, I'm going to seek out the version of Paul who is massively in love with me because I know he exists. I experienced him here. And I realize that some people have rocky relationships, with their loved one, and it kind of goes up and down and in and out and all that, which doesn't mean that they're not meant to be together for forever. Uh, but I think it can be more difficult for them because they had difficulties. Still, in the rockiest relationship, if you believe this, if you're massively in love with your person, totally blissfully, tremendously in love with your person, you had to have had some time together where you were on the same wavelength and in love with each other. And so you can use, even if it's, I remember talking in one of our groups about a person in our group, our Facebook group, who came to our group in the very, very, very beginning. I think it was just William and me and this one or two other people. And she knew this person one day, and she was really convinced that this was it for her. And, maybe that's all she needed. Maybe they were together in other lifetimes. I feel like I'm rambling right now, but all I'm saying is that in any loving relationship, even if it was rocky, there were times that were good. There were times that you just felt, this is perfect. I want this to last for forever, And so for those people who had some difficulties, number one, you can turn your attention to those most wonderful moments and relive those. But also there's an opportunity, even after someone dies, to speak to the person and make things right and repair things with them and talk to them about it and write these things. I love that I can talk to you even though you're not here physically. I love that we can work things out that were not quite finished when you were here. I love that the difficulties we had meant nothing about the love that we hold. Things like that. So thank you so much for sticking with me through all the ups and downs. You can look at every single thing from an angle that supports the love and the romance and this, I don't even have words for it, this most precious, gorgeous bond that you have with your eternal sweetheart.
Yes, absolutely. That was excellent. Um, I wanted somebody wrote something in the chat here.
Oh, oh,
This perfectly sums up these things. I am grateful for the rocky times because we anticipated making up every time.
you worked in the anticipation part there. That's good.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's another thing is we go through rocky times, but like Irene and I went through rocky times, but
Mhm.
it strengthened us. It strengthened us to go through those rocky times. It grew our relationship to see us stick with each other through these rocky times because we're all just human beings. We all make mistakes. We all have failures. We all have personality quirks or whatever that are going to, and this world is not really built for, smooth sailing, let's say. But it's a joy and an added benefit, in my opinion, to be able to go through rocky times. And like, Mary Beth, you often talk about the ease and the uh, fairy tale like quality of your life with Paul. But I do know that you went through stuff. For one thing, you went through a 30-year separation, you know,
35,
a
35
a 35-year separation from him. And the whole time you're carrying this torch for Paul in your life. That's difficult to get through. You both were married to other people. You both had you had your own children. You had things to work out and to realize, in the nature of your relationship that you talked about before, about like when he got cancer, where you were had your attention focused on your children, and then he
Yes.
got the cancer, and your attention immediately went all to Paul, right? So these are things that happen in life that are challenges that reveal it helps to reveal the commitment and the love that we have for each other. I've often said you can't learn any of that just lollygagging around in the comfort of the afterlife. You don't get to see any of that, and I think that's one of the great things about this life is that we get to observe ourselves and other people in a very difficult situation. Okay, in very difficult situations, and it's revealing to us, and it gives us the opportunity to be who we want to be in those situations, and to keep our attention on what we want to keep our attention on. And as we're talking about here, it gives us a great opportunity to what I think is a very valuable thing to do here, and that is develop some mental muscle. Okay, and that's what we're talking about here is develop the mental muscle to redirect your thoughts to in one sense in one way towards anticipation instead of towards dread, towards happiness instead of despair, um, to be able to reframe how you see things in order to more enjoy more of life. Like a lot of people are uh, have social anxiety about going out because they're worried about how the situation might develop into one where it comes up about their partner dying, and how are they going to deal with that situation. And they don't want to be hurt by people disagreeing with them, or by saying that the afterlife doesn't exist, or by giving them a crazy look, like what's wrong with you, they don't want to do that. And it's like it requires the mental muscle to reframe how you think about that. And one of the ways to reframe how you think about it is, number one, doesn't really matter what they think, right? They're not living your life, and they haven't gone through what you've gone through. Okay, so you know what do they know? That's one thing. But I love your reframe, the way you have framed all that, and that is that it's a glorious opportunity for things to happen, wonderful things to happen. And when other people meet or exceed your anticipation or your desired expectations of how other people can respond. And I've experienced that myself. From completely unexpected sources of people really valuing and appreciating our willingness to speak on this subject, both of our loving relationships and of the afterlife. And you can't, if you're dreading that. Okay, so that sets you up in a mental framework, right? That is not conducive to enjoying your life and being yourself. And as you have said, celebrating in public your love for Paul, or my love for Irene. And when you can reframe things and develop the mental muscle to understand, to so that it doesn't bother you. And of course, you there's in the beginning you could be under some pretty emotionally precarious situations, and I'm not saying you should do it then. What I'm talking about is just what you and I are talking about is developing the mental techniques for uh, developing a way of going through life, mental frameworks and mental redirections, and that affect you emotionally. It will change how you react emotionally. It will change how you feel about things. It will. I've been through this many times. Like I said before, I changed my whole concept, my framework of conflict, and this is long before Irene died. I changed my whole concept of conflict from being one that I dreaded and avoided to one where I anticipated. It's like, oh, is this going to lead to a conflict situation? How fun! How fun this is going to be! And so it's like, is that's what I'm saying is that you would be amazed at the power of that this gives you in your life to live it how you want to live it, and to be able to say what you want to say, or what you enjoy saying, and by not blocking yourself off from your capacity and the opportunity of all that by dreading things. Am I making any sense, Mary Beth?
Yes. Well, no. Yeah, yes.
I'm
Of
just
course.
babbling, William.
No.
Babbling incoherently.
Well, any sort of worry or doubt or fear or any of that, that's all resistance to what is, you know. And so what I in the beginning of this meeting, what I'm trying to set out is the notion that those two things exist. All the sad, awful things, there's nothing gorgeous about cancer. I mean, it's a robber and a bully, I say, or a bully and a thief is what I say. But like what you said, there's always things to appreciate, and that's what we did. Before I met you, I had learned that from Abraham, that always something to appreciate. And so even in the cancer journey with Paul, there were little things here and there, just people popped out of the woodwork to help, or just I remember one time when he was first diagnosed and he had to get chemotherapy, and all this was new to us, and I just felt like I was just out of my mind with worry, and they had a pharmacy in the hospital that was just like you couldn't go to CVS. I don't know if you have CVS near you. You couldn't go to the regular drugstore and get these drugs. They were medications he would have to take at home, chemotherapy or whatever. And I went down there by myself and I stood in line and I went up and I said, I need this for my husband. He's having chemotherapy for the first time. And the pharmacist said, oh, yeah, we're out of that. Next. And I was so upset and I started to cry. And I walked away, and a nurse said, what's the matter? And I told her, and she put her arm around my shoulder and she said, come with me. And she took me to the front of the line and she said, you get her this right now. And he said, oh, all right. And he went and got it. So I never forgot there were in the face of such horror and pain and fear. Paul had terminal cancer from the get-go. He was not going to be cured. It already had metastasized in his body. And it was not something that, oh, maybe, he'll overcome. Nobody overcame that kind of thing. And so that fear and the horror of it was just, and trying to be up for Paul, I think I told this group before that in a video before that a friend of mine said, well, don't cry in front of him. That'll just make it worse for him. So I remember going to, I think I told this before. I remember like I just would feel like I just was going to explode with sorrow when he was still living. And I went to the local supermarket and I called my ex, Frank, who, was friends with Paul. And he kind of talked me, and I sobbed in the middle of the supermarket. And Frank said, Mary Beth, nobody's going to die today. He'll be fine. Just go back, spend time with him. And yeah, I did. I went back into our bank building and I heard Paul from the other room go, "Hey, babe," and he was like all up and I was like, so it was really hard. I had to manage all these, everybody who's taken care of a loved one with a prolonged illness has gone through what I'm describing. I'm not the only person on earth. And by the way, thinking that way, Mary Beth, you are not the only person on earth to have ever had your your sweetheart husband diagnosed with terminal cancer. You are not. I looked it up online in the United States of pancreatic cancer, which is what Paul had. 48,000 people in the United States each year are diagnosed with it. So I was not the only one. I'm not special in that way, So I just had to, from the get-go, I decided to follow Abraham's tips of just putting my attention as much as possible on what was supportive and loving and the positive outcome. And
Right. The opportunity that you had there, which I had with Irene, is
yes,
to show him and show her how much we love them. Yeah, how much they mean to us. It's the other day. I mean, I would write these big, giant letters to Irene when she had to stay overnight in the hospital, uh, just telling her how much I loved her, why I loved her, all the things she had done for me, how much she means to me, that I will always love her.
yes,
And I'm not saying you can't do that when they're not terminally ill, but it gives you an opportunity. It gives you an opportunity to rise to the occasion,
yes,
because you and I both had to do things with our partners that we never imagined ourselves capable of doing. And you find out, yeah, you're really capable of doing those things because the love carries you through. Your love
yes,
for this person absolutely carries you through. So, and and here's the thing: is I so appreciate that opportunity. I
yes.
so appreciate that.
So
He,
fortunate to have it, right?
yes,
Right?
I know it sounds crazy to people, but it's it's so unbelievably, I don't know, rewarding or beautiful
Yes,
that we had this opportunity to, this is just in general terms of finding things to appreciate, even in the middle of the horror of what is going on, of just being able to appreciate. And of course, I'm not saying there was appreciation for it right at the time. There was some, I was like, I wasn't like, oh, good, she's sick. Now I get to show her how much I love
oh no, no,
her.
no, not
But
that.
I did think I get to demonstrate at the time. I get to demonstrate to her that she's my one and only. I'm not going to run off. I'm not going to become emotionally distant. I'm going to show her as much love. I'm going to try to make her as laugh as often as I can. I'm and it's just afterwards, I have become so unbelievably appreciative of having the opportunity to show Irene that she's my one and only, and that no matter what she's going through, and no matter what we're going through, and no matter how much it hurts me, and no matter how much it is absolutely causing me to crash out, in my mind and in my heart, that I will be there for her, that I am here for you, and
Yeah,
so I absolutely am thankful for that. And this right now, here's another way of framing this that we've talked about, is I get to do that now. I
yes,
get to do it now, to where I don't even need your physical body here. I don't need your voice. I don't need to be able to touch you. I don't need to be able to sense to hear your voice in my head. I don't have to be able to visit you regularly in astral projection, or in my case, even go to a medium. I don't need to do any of that to be able to continue to express my love for my wife. and I know she's there. I know she exists. And I'm like, babe, this is, I love you. Yeah. This is how much I love you. I'm so happy to be able to show you this, that you're my one and only, that I will always be yours. And it's a great opportunity. And that's a framework of thinking about these kind of things where you can learn to live in the anticipation of what is to come and also live in the joy of what we have now, of this. And even though this is a challenging and this, so it's challenging. That's great. It's great that it's challenging. That gives you the opportunity to strengthen yourself, to rise to it, to rise to the occasion, to overcome a challenge, and to, for me, I'll say this, for me to walk across into the afterlife and be proud
Yes.
of how I carried this love for my wife all the way through to the very end. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think it's and the way I think of it is that it's an honor and a privilege. For me, it's an honor and a privilege that I get to be, Paul always said, that's my girl. That I get forever to be Paul's girl. No matter what, no matter what. Even if I get over there and, you know, he's off with someone else, I still, in my heart, I'll always be Paul's girl. And I don't really believe he's with anyone else anyway. I'm just saying when he died, that was my fear, like, well, maybe, yeah, we're soulmates, but maybe there's somebody who's a more soulmatey or mate.
Well, I want to jump in on that too while we have a little time left because you brought it up before, and that's this is that for any type of concern like that, that
I
we're
don't
with
worry about
somebody
that
else.
now. Well,
Do what?
I don't worry about that anymore.
Yeah,
No.
right, right. No, I understand that, but for other people, the concern of because people have expressed this: am I good enough for him?
Yes.
Or
Yes. What if they don't
am I?
love me?
They don't love me, or it's just anything like that. So this goes back to something else that you said is that all of us have spent this time at some point in time in our lives together of that pure, blissful, absolute love connection, or else we wouldn't be here.
Yes.
You wouldn't be here in this group if you didn't experience that. We have all experienced that. And here's the thing is, and this is I always tell Irene, we have a little joke about it. This is my plan B. If I get to the afterlife and you want nothing to do with me, it doesn't matter. She has nothing to say about it. I will go back and live in those days where we were in this blissful state together for all of eternity. She has got nothing to say about that. She can't stop me from doing it. She got nothing to say about that.
She's not the boss of you, William.
Right. And if that's what it takes, that's what it will be. I'll tell you, I will be completely satisfied and happy if that's all I get. Is to go back and live in, because in the afterlife we have perfect memory recall. We have experiential memory where it's like reliving it. I've got lots of days and weeks and months and years to perfectly relive. And they also say that you can also experience new stuff in those places with those. I'm set. Now, this is why I'm so happy about this, is that I have resolved all of those issues and all of those worries, all of those concerns by number one, reframing how I thought about stuff, found ways to think about it to where, well, you know what? If you don't want to be with me, that's fine. I'm still going to be with you, whether you like it or not. You said God made me just for you. That's true. And I'm going to be with you no matter what. So I'm set with that. I'm good.
Of
Of
course,
course,
of
yeah.
course, Irene wants to be with you.
Oh, well, I know that. That's fine. It's like a little joke, but I'm just saying that there was like a little thing about, like I said before to the group. I hope I'm not annoying her by talking to her all the time, uh, or what. But the reason I came up with this line of thought was because people in the group were expressing that concern. I thought, how can I give them a way of thinking about this
Right.
to where they don't have to be concerned about it anymore. And so I thought of this, and this is something that's absolutely supported by afterlife information. Jurgen Zeve wrote a book about it called Multidimensional Man, where there are like all infinite versions of ourselves running around. And I know that can be like a weird thought to people, but I didn't take it as a weird thought. I immediately thought, well, that means that the Irene who expressed her undying eternal love for me and exhibited it exists and always exists. So I've always got that in my back pocket. And so I offered it to the group as a way of thinking about it to where you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about whether or not they're really your soulmate or whether or not you will really be able to be with them or whether or not you'll be able to go to your happily ever after. Of course you can. And another thing that we've talked about in this is that we're talking about infinity, an infinity of possibilities where they're all experienceable as real. Anything you can imagine can be experienced as real in the afterlife. And so that's another frame of thought where it alleviates all the worry. Like, what's going to happen when I get to the afterlife? Am I going to be, forced to reincarnate? No, you're not going to be. Don't worry about that. Am I going to be forced to undergo some kind of re-education program? Or is the council going to get on my case about this or that, or say, well, you need to learn this or that? Is that you don't have to worry about anything like that. It's a matter. Don't let other people and other sources frame how you think about these things,
Mhm.
especially when they're framing these things in ways that are upsetting or limiting or worrisome.
Yes.
Why would you allow them to do that? Why allow these other people to frame how you think about these things?
I think
My
people, oh, I'm
let,
sorry.
let me just finish off here.
Go ahead, please do.
And this
Sorry.
goes to what something you were talking about earlier, that original thing about the different thoughts, the different direction of thoughts that you can have. That first process is my way of dealing with that is to think about the best possible way to think about it. Think about the best possible, not find something that's just a little better. I go to the extreme. I go, what is the absolute best, most enjoyable, greatest, my most deepest wish and desire way of thinking about this, as if it's true. That's what I go to, and that's what I hold on, and that's how I frame my thoughts. It's not just like incremental, which may work better for some people. I go to the extreme. I go way off to the extreme, and that's how and it's and more often than not, I find somebody in the afterlife community who agrees with me. Somebody who's had that experience. Somebody who has some source that says yes. Like my extreme was the eternally happy ever after in specifically romantic lovers paradise. That was my extreme. I was like going, yes, that's the best. And then what did I find out? Emanuel Swedenborg says the same thing. you know, so yeah. Anyway, I didn't mean to ramble on there. Go ahead, Mary Beth.
Oh no, that's okay. Even though I recommend or put out that process that Abraham says about, incremental thing, like they say reach for the next best thought because sometimes I actually do what you do. I go right for I have a big imagination. I go right for the gold cup, the trophy. But for some people, when they try to do that, it's too much for them and it's like, well, that's ridiculous. The other end of it is ridiculous. So it's better for them to do it in baby steps a little bit. But that's why I really like that, you know, thank you because I love you because or whatever. And that's something that I think is very doable. And people can harvest experiences and feelings they already have,
Yeah,
you have had, and so it's nothing outside of their own personal mental realm of possibilities.
yeah. That's a good point because the incremental thing is I've spent decades doing this, so it was for me incremental as well until I got to the point where I was like able and free to go to the extreme. And that's my go-to place. And this is what I have kind of boiled that down to is that locked deep, there's a little thing I say is locked deep in your heart is that which you hide and protect because it's too good to be true.
Yes.
It's too good to be true. And my position is unlock that because that's not too good to be true. That's your actual home. That's where you actually belong. That's where you hope to go and want to go, and that it already exists somewhere. It already exists somewhere. is that what your heart is saying? Well, this is too good to be true. And people defend that, or they bury it, and they protect it by not really believing it, or by saying, well, that's just a dream or whatever. No, that's what I go to. I search my heart for what is too good to be true, what people would think is too good to be true, and I recognize it and value it as that's my home that already exists. That's why my heart says these things. That's why my heart has this in it. Okay, my mind is trying to convince me it's too good to be true, or that can't possibly be, but my heart already knows it's true. My heart knows that's where I already belong. And it's
Yes.
just a question of releasing it and letting it be your guiding light.
Yes, that's why Abraham's. I don't mean to, I read a lot of different teachers, so I don't mean to go down. I'm not a proponent of only like hitching your wagon to one guru kind of thing. I think lots of people have lots of teachers have lots to contribute. But what you just said is the core of what Abraham teaches is that when you feel good, when you're in the flow of love, you're most connected with, they call it source, you're most connected with the love stream of the universe. And that's where you're supposed to be. We're not meant to feel horrible. We're meant to feel good. But the horrible things that come up in our life, they can pose as opportunities for us to do what you said, which is to strengthen our muscle of, oh, well, I don't like that. How can I get back to the good feeling place? And that's really what I think we're here for. I think we're here for to strengthen that muscle so that you can get to it. Like right now, I feel like I'm unhurtable. Like anything anybody would say to me, it can't hurt my feelings. I know we're almost at the very, very tippy end here. I don't think I ever told you this story, but forgive me if I did. But this is along the same line, not about Paul, but when I was in a freshman in college, um, I think I took an ethics class, I think it was called. I didn't even know what ethics meant, but it sounded cool. So I took the class and we had to do a paper. And did I tell you this story? And so I did the paper and I worked really hard on it because I always wanted to be a writer my whole life. So I did my first college paper. And the professor, who was just like, I don't know, an adjunct guy, but he had a goatee. So I thought he was very smart. And he had us come in. He scheduled each of us to come into his office so he could go over our papers with us. So I went to his office. I'm 18 years old. I'm standing there and he had his back to me and he turned around and he said, "Oh, yeah, what's your name again?" And I told him, he said, "Oh, yeah, here, I have your paper." And I'm like, because I was sure I was going to get an A. And he said to me, "I don't know where you came up with this drivel."
Oh my God.
He said, and I'm like, and he said, then he starts reading passages aloud. He said, "This makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know where you got that." And I was mortified. And being young, and I was so eager to please, I started to cry. And he turned around. He said, "Well, don't take it personally." And so what I decided was I had to rewrite it, get credit for it or whatever. But I decided I'm not going to write again. I mean, I was the editor of our high school, this and that and the other thing. I wrote a book of poetry and gave it to Paul. I was set to be a writer. I said, "Oh, I'm not," because that authority figure told me you wrote drivel. And then fast forward, when I went to graduate school, like 5 years later, I took a class it was how to teach English language arts, which includes reading and all that, to young kids. So I went to the class and he had us write a paper, and I had to write the paper because it was homework, and I submitted it. And I came to class late when he was handing out the papers, and the woman in front of me turned around and she said, "Mary Beth, he said you could write for publication." And I said, "Oh, really?" So I got my paper back, and that's what it said. I got an A, and it said, "Have you considered writing for publication?" So after the class, I went up to the professor, who was this older gentleman, and I said, "Oh, Dr. Goldberg, do you really think I could write for publication?" And he said, "I wrote it there, didn't I?" He was not the most effusive person, but he said, "Yeah, I think you could." He said, "But here's what I think you should do. I think you should, before you attempt writing anything." This is many, many years ago, everybody. Let's go back, over 50 years ago. So he's no computer or anything. I had a Hunt and Peck typewriter. And he said, "The thing is that Every single writer suffers rejection. So what I want you to do is go into a bookstore or a library or both and look at, just stand in the middle and look at all the books. Every single one of those people who have been published have been rejected. And you can't take it personally if they like what you do or don't like what you do. It's just about the work. And so, I learned from that not to take things personally. And now in talking about Paul, if someone says something to me like, well, there's no, and people have said this to me, there's no afterlife. You're living in a dream or you're living in a fantasy. He's not there. Get yourself on some dating sites. People have said that to me. And I don't think they woke up that morning thinking, how can I hurt Mary Beth today? So I don't take it personally. I just think that's from their perspective. It has nothing to do with Paul and me. It has nothing to do. And so through the years, in my work and now in my personal life, especially, I don't take anything personally in a bad way. I mean, if somebody's loving to me, of course, I embrace that. But you know what I mean? I don't, so I don't look to when Paul died, but I was weak as a kitten at that point. And then if I read something that was upsetting, I would get upset. But I strengthened that muscle, as you were saying. And eventually I learned that what I read, if it didn't support me, if it didn't make me feel good, if it didn't help me feel closer to Paul, it wasn't meant for me. And so I just learned, take it or toss it. And that was a big lesson. And it took me a couple years to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. And that's a wonderful place, wonderful advice, and a wonderful way of thinking about things. Okay, that can alleviate a lot of problems. And I think if it's all right with you, we'll end the meeting here, the discussion here. And let me see if I can find the
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
yes, thank you for coming. And
Thank you, William and
thank you.
Irene
Thank
and
you,
Paul.
Mary Beth and Paul. You're just not gonna let me stop recording, are you? Here we go.